Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we diving deep into a topic that has been taking the world by storm. Korea and its amazing people. From K-pop idols dancing their way into our hearts to the intense drama of K-dramas that keep us up all night, Korean culture has become a global phenomenon. But what is it about Koreans that makes their culture so captivating? Let's explore some of the fascinating aspects of the Korean people and their way of life. First, let's talk about Jong. This is a unique Korean concept that's hard to translate directly. It's a deep, warm feeling of connection and attachment you share with people, places, or even things. It's the reason a restaurant owner might give you extra side dishes for free just because they like you. It's that unspoken bond that makes relationships in Korea so strong and heartfelt. It's a mix of love, empathy, and community spirit all rolled into one, and it's a huge part of the social fabric. Now, you can't talk about Koreans without mentioning their incredible work ethic. You might have heard of the poly culture, which means hurry, hurry. This drive for speed and efficiency is a big reason why South Korea transformed itself into a global economic powerhouse in just a few decades. From its lightning-fast internet to its super-efficient delivery services, everything is geared towards getting things done quickly. This isn't just about work, though. It's a mindset of constant improvement and never settling for good enough. It's this passion and dedication that fuels the perfection you see in K-pop performances and the high-tech innovations from companies like Samsung and Hyundai. Of course, with all that hard work, Koreans also know how to have fun and relax. Food is at the center of social life. Getting together for Korean barbecue, or gogi isn't just about eating. It's a communal experience. You grill meat together, share side dishes, and bond over a bottle of soju. It's loud, it's delicious. And it's a perfect example of how Koreans balance their intense work lives with a strong sense of community and enjoyment. And let's not forget noribang, or karaoke rooms. It's a national pastime where everyone, from students to company executives, can let loose and sing their hearts out in a private room. Another key aspect is the deep respect for elders and tradition, rooted in Confucian values. This shapes social interactions, from the way people speak to each other using different levels of formality to the importance of family gatherings during holidays like Chuseok and Seollal. While modern Korea is very forward-thinking, this connection to its history and heritage remains incredibly strong. It creates a society that is both dynamic and deeply rooted. And finally, we have to talk about Han. This is another one of those complex Korean concepts. It's often described as a collective feeling of unresolved sorrow, grief, and resentment. It stems from Korea's long and often painful history of invasions and hardship. But Han isn't just about sadness. It's also a source of incredible resilience and determination. It's a fire that drives Koreans to overcome adversity and to strive for a better future. It's this powerful, underlying emotion that adds so much depth and soul to Korean art, music, and film. So, from the warmth of Jong to the passion of poly and the resilience of Han, the Korean people are a fascinating blend of tradition and modernity, hard work and heartfelt connection. It's this unique combination that has captured the world's attention and made Korean culture so beloved. What's your favorite thing about Korean culture? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. See you in the next one. Modernist constructivism correlates the emergence of ethnicity with the movement towards nation-states beginning in the early modern period. Proponents of this theory, such as Eric Hobsbawm, argue that ethnicity and notions of ethnic pride, such as nationalism, are purely modern inventions, appearing only in the modern period of world history. They hold that prior to this, ethnic homogeneity was not considered an ideal or necessary factor in the forging of large-scale societies. Ethnicity is an important means by which people may identify with a larger group. Many social scientists, such as the anthropologists Frederick Barth and Eric Wolf, do not consider ethnic identity to be universal. They regard ethnicity as a product of specific kinds of intergroup interactions, rather than an essential quality inherent to human groups. The process that results in emergence of such identification is called ethnogenesis. Members of an ethnic group, on the whole, claim cultural continuities over time, although historians and cultural anthropologists have documented that many of the values, practices, and norms that imply continuity with the past are of relatively recent invention. Ethnic groups can form a cultural mosaic in a society. That could be in a city like New York City or Trieste, but also the fallen monarchy of the Austro-Hungarian Empire or the United States. Current topics are in particular social and cultural differentiation, multilingualism, competing identity offers, multiple cultural identities, and the formation of the salad bowl and melting pot. Ethnic groups differ from other social groups, such as subcultures, interest groups, or social classes, because they emerge and change over historical periods, centuries, in a process known as ethnogenesis, a period of several generations of endogamy resulting in common ancestry, which is then sometimes cast in terms of a mythological narrative of a founding figure. Ethnic identity is reinforced by reference to boundary markers, characteristics said to be unique to the group which set it, apart from other groups. Ethnicity theory in the United States. Ethnicity theory argues that race is a social category and is only one of several factors in determining ethnicity. Other criteria include religion, language, customs, nationality, and political identification. This theory was put forward by the sociologist Robert E. Park in the 1920s. It is based on the notion of culture. This theory was preceded by more than 100 years during which biological essentialism was the dominant paradigm on race. Biological essentialism is the belief that some races, specifically white Europeans in Western versions of the paradigm, are biologically superior and other races, specifically non-white races in Western debates, are inherently inferior. This view arose as a way to justify enslavement of African Americans and genocide of Native Americans in a society that was officially founded on freedom for all. This was a notion that developed slowly and came to be a preoccupation with scientists, theologians, and the public. Religious institutions asked questions about whether there had been multiple creations of races, polygenesis, and whether God had created lesser races. Many of the foremost scientists of the time took up the idea of racial difference and found that white Europeans were superior. The ethnicity theory was based on the assimilation model. Park outlined 4 steps to assimilation: contact, conflict, accommodation, and assimilation. Instead of attributing the marginalized status of people of color in the United States to their inherent biological inferiority, he attributed it to their failure to assimilate into American culture. They could become equal if they abandoned their inferior cultures. Michael Omi's and Howard Winant's theory of racial formation directly confronts both the premises and the practices of ethnicity theory. They argue in Racial Formation in the United States that the ethnicity theory was exclusively based on the immigration patterns of the white population and did take into account the unique experiences of non-whites in the United States. While Park's theory identified different stages in the immigration process: contact, conflict, struggle, and as the last and best response, assimilation, it did so only for white communities. The ethnicity paradigm neglected the ways in which race can complicate a community's interactions with social and political structures, especially upon contact. Assimilation, shedding the particular qualities of a native culture for the purpose of blending in with a host culture, did not work for some groups as a response to racism and discrimination, though it did for others. Once the legal barriers to achieving equality had been dismantled, the problem of racism became the sole responsibility of already disadvantaged communities. It was assumed that if a Black or Latino community was not making it by the standards that had been set by whites, it was because that community did not hold the right values or beliefs, or were stubbornly resisting dominant norms because they did not want to fit in. Omi and Winant's critique of ethnicity theory explains how looking to cultural defect as the source of inequality ignores the concrete socio-political dynamics within which racial phenomena operate in the U.S. It prevents critical examination of the structural components of racism and encourages a benign neglect of social inequality. Ethnicity and nationality. In some cases, especially those involving transnational migration or colonial expansion, people may link ethnicity to nationality. Anthropologists and historians, following the modernist understanding of ethnicity as proposed by Ernest Gellner and by Benedict Anderson, see nations and nationalism as developing with the rise of the modern state system in the 17th century. This process culminated in the rise of nation-states, in which the presumptive boundaries of the nation coincided, or ideally coincided, with state boundaries. Thus, in the Western world, the notion of ethnicity, like race and nation, developed in the context of European colonial expansion, when mercantilism and capitalism were promoting global movements of populations at the same time that state boundaries were being more clearly and rigidly defined. In the 19th century, modern states generally sought legitimacy through their claim to represent nations. Nation-states, however, invariably include populations who have been excluded from national life for one reason or another. Members of excluded groups, consequently, will either demand inclusion based on equality or they will seek autonomy, sometimes even to the extent of complete political separation from their existing nation-state. Under these conditions, when people moved from one state to another, or when one state conquered or colonized peoples beyond its national boundaries, ethnic groups were formed by people who identified with one nation but lived in another state. Multi-ethnic states can result from one of two opposite events: either the recent creation of state borders at variance with traditional tribal territories, or the recent immigration of ethnic minorities into a formerly homogeneous nation-state. Examples for the first case occur throughout Africa, where countries formed during decolonization inherited arbitrary colonial borders, but also in European countries such as Belgium or the United Kingdom. Examples for the second case are countries such as Netherlands, which were relatively ethnically homogeneous when they attained statehood, but have received significant immigration in the 17th century and even more so in the second half of the 20th century. States such as the United Kingdom, France, and Switzerland comprise distinct ethnic groups from their formation and have likewise experienced substantial immigration, resulting in what have been termed multicultural societies, especially in large cities. The states of the New World were multi-ethnic from the onset, as they developed as settler colonies imposed on existing indigenous populations. In recent decades, feminist scholars, most notably Neera Yuval Davis, have drawn attention to the fundamental ways in which women participate in the creation and reproduction of ethnic and national categories. Though these categories are usually discussed as belonging to the public, political sphere, they are upheld within the private, family sphere to a great extent. It is here that women act not just as biological reproducers, but also as cultural carriers, transmitting knowledge and enforcing behaviors that belong to a specific collectivity. Women also often play a significant symbolic role in conceptions of nation or ethnicity. For example, in the notion that women and children constitute the kernel of a nation which must be defended in times of conflict, or in iconic figures such as Britannia or Marianne. Ethnicity and race. Before Weber, 1864 to 1920, race and ethnicity were primarily seen as two aspects of the same thing. Around 1900 and before, the primordialist understanding of ethnicity predominated. Cultural differences between peoples were seen as being the result of inherited traits and tendencies. With Weber's introduction of the idea of ethnicity as a social construct, race and ethnicity became more divided from each other. In 1950, the UNESCO statement, The Race Question, signed by some of the internationally renowned scholars of the time, including Ashley Montagu, Claude Levi-Strauss, Gunnar Myrdal, Julian Huxley, etc., said, "National, religious, geographic, linguistic, and cultural groups do not necessarily coincide with racial groups, and the cultural traits of such groups have no demonstrated genetic connection with racial traits. Because serious errors of this kind are habitually committed when the term race is used in popular parlance, it would be better when speaking of human races to drop the term race altogether and speak of ethnic groups." In 1982, the anthropologist David Craig Griffith summarized 40 years of ethnographic research, arguing that racial and ethnic categories are symbolic markers for different ways people from different parts of the world have been incorporated into a global economy. The opposing interests that divide the working classes are further reinforced through appeals to racial and ethnic distinctions. Such appeals serve to allocate different categories of workers to rungs on the scale of labor markets, relegating stigmatized populations to the lower levels and insulating the higher echelons from competition from below. Capitalism did not create all the distinctions of ethnicity and race that function to set off categories of workers from one another. It is, nevertheless, the process of labor mobilization under capitalism that imparts to these distinctions their effective values. According to Wolff, Racial categories were constructed and incorporated during the period of European mercantile expansion and ethnic groupings during the period of capitalist expansion. Writing in 1977 about the usage of the term ethnic in the ordinary language of the United Kingdom and the United States, Wallman noted, "The term ethnic popularly connotes race in Britain, only less precisely and with a lighter value load. In North America, by contrast, race most commonly means color, and ethnics are the descendants of relatively recent immigrants from non-English-speaking countries. Ethnic is not a noun in Britain. In effect, there are no ethnics. There are only ethnic relations. In the U.S., the Office of Management and Budget says the definition of race as used for the purposes of the U.S. Census is not scientific or anthropological and takes into account social and cultural characteristics as well as ancestry, using appropriate scientific methodologies that are not primarily biological or genetic in reference." Ramon Grossfogel, University of California, Berkeley, argues that racial/ethnic identity is one concept and concepts of race and ethnicity cannot be used as separate and autonomous categories. Igukka, Korean Daegukka, Hanja, Iguluk, often translated as the patriotic song, is the national anthem of South Korea. It was adopted in 1948, the year the country's government was founded. Its music was composed in the 1930s and arranged most recently in 2018. Its lyrics date back to the 1890s. The lyrics of Igukka were originally set to the music of the Scottish song, Auld Lang Syne, before On Iktai composed a unique melody specifically for it in 1936. Before the founding of South Korea, the version set to the music of Auld Lang Syne was sung, as well as when Korea was under Japanese rule by dissidents. The version set to the melody composed by On Iktai was adopted as the national anthem of the Korean exile government, which existed during Korea's occupation by Japan from the early 1910s to the mid-1940s. Igukka has 4 verses, but on most occasions only the first one, followed by the chorus, is sung when performed publicly at events such as baseball games and soccer matches. Igukka literally means patriotic song. The Encyclopedia of Korean Culture defines Igukka as the song to wake up the mind to love the country. Igukka, in itself, is differentiated from a national anthem. While a national anthem, or gukka, lit. Country song, is an official symbol of the state, Igukka refers to any song, official or unofficial, that contains patriotic fervor towards its country, such as Hungary's Sozit or the U.S., the Stars and Stripes Forever. However, the nationally designated Igukka plays the role of symbolizing the country. In general shorthand, the term Igukka refers to the national anthem of South Korea. Nevertheless, there are still more than 10 other extant Igukkas in South Korea. The music to Igukka was composed in 1936 by an Iktae, 1906 to 1965. It was customarily called the national anthem until it was officially established as the national anthem of South Korea after the government's foundation on August 15, 1948. There are theories that the lyrics were written by Yoon Chi-ho, On Chong-ho, or Min Young-hwan, but none of these have been officially confirmed. It was not officially designated or adopted as the national anthem by the government, but it came to be customarily called the national anthem and eventually became the song symbolizing the Republic of Korea. Composer On Iktae first encountered the lyrics of Igukka during the March 1st movement in 1919. Feeling regretful that Igukka was being sung to the tune of the Scottish folk song, Auld Lang Syne, also known as the Song of Farewell, he decided that he, as a Korean, should compose its melody himself and composed Igukka in 1935. Before the current Igukka, the first national anthem was created during the Korean Empire era. After the Gaba Reform of 1894 and the establishment of the Independence Association in 1896, many anthems to inspire patriotism were written in the private sector, numbering about 10. Although it is unclear which melodies were used, the lyrics began to be published in the Independence newspaper. During this time, the Korean Empire's national anthem was officially proclaimed, marking the first time a national anthem was formally established by the state. After the proclamation of the Korean Empire, Emperor Gojong felt the need for a national anthem as a state symbol and announced the establishment of a military band by law in December 1900. He invited German musician Franz von Eckert, 1852 to 1916. Eckert, who had served as the bandmaster of the German Navy, was invited to Japan in 1879, where he worked with the Japanese Navy and contributed to the spread of Western music. After 23 years in Japan, he returned to Germany in March 1900 and was recommended by the German legation in Korea to come to Korea on February 7, 1901, bringing various instruments for a 50-member military band. Following Emperor Gojoseon's command, he completed the Korean Empire's national anthem on July 1, 1902, based on traditional Korean musical scales, and it was proclaimed as the national anthem on August 15, 1902. Eckert was awarded the Taeguk Order of Merit, 3rd class, for his contribution to composing the anthem. The origin of Koreans has not been well clarified yet. Based on linguistic, archaeological, and genetic evidence, their place of origin is located somewhere in Northeast Asia, but its exact pattern of expansion and arrival into the Korean peninsula remains unclear. Koreans were suggested to have originated from a similar source as Central Asian Mongolians from a genetic perspective. Archaeological evidence suggests that Proto-Koreans were migrants from Manchuria during the Bronze Age. The origins of the Korean language and people are subjects of ongoing debate. Some theories suggest connections to the Altaic region, proposing links with languages and populations in Northern Asia, including Mongolic, Turkic, and Tungusic groups. However, these claims remain inconclusive, and many scholars argue that Korean belongs to its own distinct Koreanic family, with unique linguistic and cultural origins. Scholars suggest that Koreanic speakers came from Northeast Asia and migrated southwards to the Korean peninsula, where they replaced or assimilated the local Japonic speakers. Whitman, 2011, suggests that the Proto-Koreans arrived in the southern part of the Korean peninsula at around 300 BCE and coexisted with the descendants of the Japonic Mumin cultivators, or assimilated them. Vavin suggests Proto-Korean is equivalent to the variant of Koreanic languages spoken in southern Manchuria and northern Korean peninsula by the time of the Three Kingdoms of Korea period and spread to southern Korea through influence from Goguryeo migrants. The arrival of early Koreans can be associated with the Bronze Age dagger culture, which expanded from the West Liao River region. Archaeologic evidence points to a connection between the pottery-making style of the late Neolithic to Bronze Age cultures in the West Liao River Basin and the Korean Peninsula. Miyamoto 2021 similarly argues that Proto-Koreanic arrived with the rolled rim vessel culture, Geomtodi culture, from the Liaodong Peninsula, gradually replacing the Japonic speakers of the Mumin culture. However, some scholars reject the notion that the Korean speakers were not native to the Korean peninsula and argue that no solid evidence of such linguistic migration/shift, as well as population and material change in the peninsular region, has ever been found to support later migrations. The largest concentration of dolmens in the world is found on the Korean peninsula. In fact, with an estimated 35,000 to 100,000 dolmens, Korea accounts for nearly 40% of the world's total. Similar dolmens can be found in northeast China, the Shandong Peninsula, and the island of Kyushu. Yet it is unclear why this culture only flourished so extensively on the Korean peninsula and its surroundings compared to the bigger remainder of Northeast Asia. The Three Kingdoms of Korea, or Samhan, Goguryeo, Paex, and Silla, competed for hegemony over the Korean peninsula during the ancient period of Korean history. During the Three Kingdoms period, Korean, many states and statelets consolidated until, after Bio was annexed in 494 and Gaya was annexed in 562, only three remained on the Korean peninsula: Goguryeo, Paex, and Silla. The Korean Three Kingdoms contributed to what would become Korea, and the Goguryeo, Paex, and Silla peoples became the Korean people. The Three Kingdoms occupied the entire peninsula and roughly half of Manchuria, modern-day northeast China, and small parts of the Russian Far East. Goguryeo controlled the northern half of the peninsula, as well as Liaodong Peninsula and Manchuria. Paex and Silla occupied the southern half of the peninsula. The island kingdoms of Tamna and Yusan were subordinated to Paex and Silla, respectively. All three kingdoms shared a similar culture and language. Paex and Goguryeo shared founding myths, which likely originated in Bio. Buddhism, which arrived in Korea in the 3rd century AD from India via Tibet and China, became the state religion of all constituents of the three kingdoms, starting with Goguryeo in 372 AD. The three kingdoms of Korea all had a warrior aristocracy in contrast to the literary elite of China. The period ended in the 7th century, after Silla allied with Tang China and unified the peninsula for the first time in history. After the fall of Peksh and Goguryeo, the Tang dynasty established a short-lived military government to administer parts of the Korean peninsula. Silla was joined by Goguryeo and Peksh loyalists and fought the Tang for hegemony over the Korean peninsula. Silla was eventually divided into the later three kingdoms and ultimately annexed by the new Goguryeo revivalist state of Goryeo. Beginning in the 7th century, the name Samhan became synonymous with the three kingdoms of Korea. The Han, in the names of the Korean Empire, Daehan Jeguk, and the Republic of Korea, South Korea, Daehan Minguk or Hanguk, are named in reference to the three kingdoms of Korea, not the ancient confederacies in the southern Korean peninsula. According to the Samguk Sagi and Samguk Yusa, Silla implemented a national policy, Samhan Unification, Samhan Iltiong, to integrate Peksh and Goguryeo refugees. In 1982, a memorial stone dating to 686 was discovered in Cheongju with an inscription. The three Han were unified and the domain was expanded. During the later Silla period, the concepts of Samhan as the ancient confederacies and the three kingdoms of Korea were merged. In a letter to an imperial tutor of the Tang dynasty, Choi Sichuan equated Bayanhan to Peksh, Jinhan to Silla, and Mayhan to Goguryeo. By the Goryeo period, Samhan became a common name to refer to all of Korea. In his 10 mandates to his descendants, Wang Jian declared that he had unified the three Han, Samhan, referring to the three kingdoms of Korea. Samhan continued to be a common name for Korea during the Joseon period and was widely referenced in the annals of the Joseon Dynasty. In China, the three kingdoms of Korea were collectively called Samhan since the beginning of the 7th century. The use of the name Samhan to indicate the three kingdoms of Korea was widespread in the Tang dynasty. Goguryeo was alternately called Mayhan by the Tang dynasty, as evidenced by a Tang document that called Goguryeo generals Mayhan leaders, Mayhan Sijang, in 645. In 651, Emperor Gaozong of Tang sent a message to the king of Peksh referring to the three kingdoms of Korea as Samhan. Epitaphs of the Tang dynasty, including those belonging to Peksh, Goguryeo, and Silla refugees and migrants, called the three kingdoms of Korea Samhan, especially Goguryeo. For example, the epitaph of Gojoseon, a Tang dynasty general of Goguryeo origin who died in 690, calls him a Liaodong Samhan man, Yodong Samanin. The name Three Kingdoms was used in the titles of the Korean histories Samguk Sagi, 12th century, and Samguk Yusa, 13th century, and should not be confused with the Three Kingdoms of China. The Three Kingdoms of Chao Wei, Shu Han, and Eastern Wu dominated China from AD 220 to 200 AD following the end of the Han Dynasty. This period was preceded by the Eastern Han Dynasty and followed by the Western Jin Dynasty. Academically, the periodization begins with the establishment of Chao Wei in 220 and ends with the conquest of Wu by Jin in 280. The period immediately preceding the Three Kingdoms, from 184 to 220, was marked by chaotic infighting among warlords across China as Han authority collapsed. The period from 220 to 263 was marked by a comparatively stable arrangement between Chao Wei, Shu Han, and Eastern Wu. This stability broke down with the conquest of Shu by Wei in 263, followed by the usurpation of Chao Wei by Jin in 266, and ultimately the conquest of Wu by Jin in 280. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that many of you have asked about, Koreans. When you think of South Korea, what comes to mind first? K-pop, delicious food like kimchi and bibimbap, or maybe cutting-edge technology from brands like Samsung. While all that is true, there's so much more to the story of the Korean people. Let's start with a little something called jong. This is a unique Korean concept that's hard to translate directly, but it's a deep, warm feeling of connection and attachment. It's what bonds families, friends, and even communities. It's the reason an ajumma at a local market might give you an extra serving of side dishes for free, just because. This sense of collective warmth and community is a huge part of the national identity. Now, let's talk about passion and determination. Koreans are known for their incredible work ethic and poly culture, which means hurry, hurry. This mindset helped rebuild the nation from the ashes of war into the economic powerhouse it is today in just a few decades. It's a drive you can see everywhere, from students studying late into the night to the relentless pursuit of perfection in arts and sports. Think about filmmaker Bong Joon-ho's historic Oscar win or the global phenomenon of BTS. That's the result of pure dedication. But it's not all work and no play. Koreans have a deep appreciation for beauty and aesthetics, which is reflected in their fashion, skincare, and even the way food is presented. They also have a strong connection to their traditions. Despite the futuristic look of cities like Seoul, you'll find ancient palaces and temples right around the corner, where centuries-old customs are still honored. Festivals celebrating the seasons and historical events are a vibrant part of life. From the bustling streets of Seoul to the serene landscapes of Jeju Island, the spirit of the Korean people is a fascinating mix of tradition and modernity, of fiery passion and deep-seated affection. They are resilient, innovative, and incredibly welcoming. Of course, this is just a quick glimpse, and every individual is unique. But hopefully, it gives you a better appreciation for the amazing people of Korea. What do you find most interesting about Korean culture? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. The Three Kingdoms period, including the collapse of the Han, was one of the most dangerous in Chinese history due to multiple plagues, widespread famines, and civil war. A nationwide census taken in 280, following the reunification of the Three Kingdoms under the Jin, showed a total of 2,459,840 households and 16,163,863 individuals, which was only a fraction of the 10,677,960 households and 56,486,856 individuals reported during the Han era. While the census may not have been particularly accurate due to a multitude of factors of the times, in 280, the Jin did make an attempt to account for all individuals where they could. Technology advanced significantly during this period. Shu Chancellor Zhuge Liang invented the wooden ox, suggested to be an early form of the wheelbarrow, and improved on the repeating crossbow. Wei mechanical engineer Ma Jun is considered by many to be the equal of his predecessor Zhang Hong. He invented a hydraulic-powered, mechanical puppet theater designed for Emperor Ming of Wei, square pallet chain pumps for irrigation of gardens in Luoyang, and the ingenious design of the south-pointing chariot, a non-magnetic directional compass operated by differential gears. The authoritative historical record of the era is Chun Shou's records of the Three Kingdoms, c. 290 AD, in tandem with the later annotations published in 429 by Pei Songji. While comparatively short, the Three Kingdoms period has been romanticized in the culture of the Sinosphere. It has been retold and dramatized in folklore, opera, and novels, as well as film, television, and video games. The most well-known fictional adaptation of the history is Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a historical novel written during the Ming Dynasty by Luo Guanzhou. The Three Kingdoms were founded after the fall of Wyman Joseon and gradually conquered and absorbed various other small states and confederacies. After the fall of Gojoseon, the Han Dynasty established 4 commanders in the northwestern Korean peninsula and present Liaoning. 3 fell quickly to the Samhan, and the last was destroyed by Goguryeo in 313. The nascent precursors of Peksh and Silla expanded within the web of statelets during the Proto-Three Kingdoms period, and Goguryeo conquered neighboring state like Bio in Manchuria and chiefdoms in Okgyo, Dongye, which occupied the northeastern Korean peninsula. The 3 polities made the transition from walled town state to full-fledged state-level societies between 1st to 3rd century AD. The primary sources for this period include Samguk Sagi and Samguk Yusa in Korea and the Eastern Barbarians section, Dichon, from the Book of Wei, Wei Su, of the records of the Three Kingdoms in China. All 3 kingdoms shared a similar culture and language. The Book of Sui, Volume 81, recorded. The customs, laws, and clothes of Goguryeo, Peksh, and Silla are generally identical. Their original religions appear to have been shamanistic, but they were increasingly influenced by Chinese culture, particularly Confucianism and Taoism. In the 4th century, Buddhism was introduced to the peninsula and spread rapidly, briefly becoming the official religion of all three kingdoms. According to Lisa K. Bailey, the material culture of the three kingdoms can be clearly distinguished as they displayed cultural influence from different regions. Goguryeo culture showed stronger influence from northern Chinese art, Beck showed stronger influence from southern Chinese art, and Silla, which was more distant from China, showed greater influence from Eurasian steppe nomad cultures and greater preservation of native traditions. During this period, the three kingdoms had yet to unify their separate identities. Each kingdom produced their own individual histories. Only in the Goryeo Dynasty period was the collective history of the Korean peninsula written together. The decline of Chinese power in the 4th century unleashed a wave of refugees that proved pivotal in speeding up the process of state building in Korea, starting the Three Kingdoms era. Genetics. A population genetic study examined the origins of Koreans using 13 polymorphic and 7 monomorphic blood genetic markers, serum proteins, and red cell enzymes, from 437 Koreans. Genetic distance analyses, performed through cluster and principal components models, compared Koreans with 8 populations: Korean Chinese, Japanese, Han Chinese, Mongols, Zhuangs, Malays, Javanese, and Soviet Asians. This analysis, based on 47 alleles across 15 polymorphic loci, demonstrated that Koreans genetically share similarities with Central Asian Mongolian groups. A more detailed analysis using 65 alleles across 19 polymorphic loci reinforced these findings and also revealed a closer genetic relationship between Koreans and Japanese and a more distant relationship with Han Chinese. The results align with ethno-historic accounts of the origin of Koreans and their language. Additionally, the Korean minority in China were shown to have maintained their distinct genetic identity. Koreans are also closely related to modern Manchus and Yamato Japanese, but possess more Siberian ancestry than Manchus. Modern Koreans primarily descend from Bronze Age farmers from the West Liao River. These farmers can be modeled as having ancient Northern East Asian ancestry, related to Yellow River farmers from the Middle to Late Neolithic period, and ancient Northeast Asian ancestry, related to Amur hunter-gatherers. West Liao River ancestry is associated with the Upper Zyajadian culture, which can represent the ancestral source for Bronze Age and modern Koreans. Similar to modern Japanese, Koreans possess genetic components related to ancient Northeast Asians from Mongolia and the Baikal region, and to a lesser extent, Papuans and Venezuelans, which might reflect a deep ancestry that's shared by most Asian populations. According to Kim et al., 2020, genetic variation within modern Koreans is attributed to the introduction of combined Vat Komnu and Nui Nap ancestries from southern China after the Bronze Age. Other studies also show this Southeast Asian contribution in Proto-Koreans. Wang and Wang, 2022, states that Koreans from the Neolithic to the Three Kingdoms period, a span covering roughly 600 BC to AD 500, have Jaman ancestry, which ranged from 10% to 95%, and significantly contributed to the genetic makeup of modern Koreans. But subsequent arrivals of newcomers from Manchuria diluted this Jaman ancestry and made the Koreans genetically homogeneous. Because of this, Koreans are closely related to Korea TK_1 individuals, who additionally exhibit affinities with Eastern Chinese due to their lower Jaman ancestry. Other studies suggest long-term continuity between Bronze Age West Liao River populations and modern Koreans, similar to Japanese. According to Sun et al., 2023, modern Koreans can be modeled as having Bronze Age West Liao River ancestry, 100%, or as a mixture of Bronze Age West Liao River, 85%, and Taiwan Hanben ancestry, 15%. Jaman ancestry in modern Koreans is estimated to be about 5%. A 2024 study shows close affinities between modern Koreans and the Doigahama Yayoi individual, who are the most related to Kofun and modern Japanese. This suggests that the people of Japan involved continuous migration from the Korean peninsula until the Kofun period, although other studies suggest a separate introduction of East Asian-related and Northeast Asian-related ancestries in Japan. Koreans display high frequencies of the Y-DNA haplogroups O2, M122, approximately 40% of all present-day Korean males, O1b2, M176, approximately 30%, and C2, M217, approximately 15%. Some regional variants may exist. In a study of South Korean Y-DNA published in 2011, the ratio of O2, M122 to O1B2, M176 is greatest in Seoul, Gyeonggi, 1.8065, with the ratio declining in a counterclockwise direction around South Korea, Chungcheong 1.6364, Jeolla 1.3929, Jeju 1.3571, Gyeongsang 1.2400, Kangwon 0.9600. Haplogroup C2, M217 tends to be found in about 13% of males from most regions of South Korea, but it is somewhat more common, about 17%, among males from the Gyeongsang region in the southeast of the peninsula, and somewhat less common, about 7%, among males from Jeju, located off the southwest coast of the peninsula. Haplogroup C2, M217 has been found in a greater proportion, about 26%, of a small sample, N equals 19, of males from North Korea. However, haplogroups are not a reliable indicator of an individual's overall ancestry. Koreans are more similar to one another in regard to their autosomes than they are similar to members of other ethnic groups. Studies of polymorphisms in the human Y chromosome have so far produced evidence to suggest that the Korean people have a long history as a distinct, mostly endogamous ethnic group, with successive prehistoric waves of people moving to the peninsula and two major Y chromosome haplogroups. The mitochondrial DNA markers, mtDNA haplogroups, and HVRI sequences of Korean populations showed close relationships with Manchurians, Japanese, Mongolians, and Northern Chinese, but not with Southeast Asians. Y chromosomal distances showed a close relationship to most East Asian population groups, including Southeast Asian ones. Koreans share a close genetic relationship with Yamato Japanese and Manchu populations, as well as other Tungusic-speaking groups, reflecting shared ancestry and historical interactions. Additionally, they exhibit genetic affinity with Northern Han Chinese populations, though to a lesser degree compared to Manchu and Japanese populations. These relationships are supported by genome-wide analyses highlighting the complex genetic structure of East Asian populations. The study, Genomic Insights into the Formation of Human Populations in East Asia, states that Koreans are genetically closest to Yamato Japanese based on FST genetic distance measurements. The research highlights the complex genetic structure of East Asian populations, shaped by historical migrations and admixture events. The reference population for Koreans used in Geno 2.0 Next Generation is 94% Eastern Asia and 5% Southeast Asia and Oceania. Korea Foundation Associate Professor of History, Eugene Y. Park said that many Koreans seem to have a genealogical memory blackout before the 20th century. According to him, the vast majority of Koreans do not know their actual genealogical history. Through inventing tradition, in the 17th and 18th centuries, families devised a kind of master narrative story that purports to explain a surname ancestral seat combination's history to the extent where it is next to impossible to look beyond these master narrative stories. He gave an example of what inventing tradition was like from his own family's genealogy, where a document from 1873 recorded 3 children in a particular family, and a later 1920 document recorded an extra son in that same family. Park said that these master narratives connect the same surname and ancestral seat to a single common ancestor. This trend became universal in the 19th century, but genealogies which were published in the 17th century actually admit that they did not know how the different lines of the same surname or ancestral seat are related at all. Only a small percentage of Koreans had surnames and ancestral seats to begin with, and that the rest of the Korean population had adopted these surname and ancestral seat identities within the last 200 to 300 years.